What good are all these dashing exploits of daring do unless you look excellent while performing them? Hello there everyone, and welcome back down here to The Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. As you can see, we are still executing the planar shift, but eventually we will relocate ourselves to an area adjacent to a location somewhere in the time stream. But once that's completed, we will hopefully resume our normal operations and not have any of these extra things going on and have the decorations returned back to their appropriate place, as you all know and love them, myself as well. But to that end, we are now going to be going on here and covering the next step of the first edition Pathfinder Swashbuckler guide, and we are of course covering the equipment now. To begin with, the most important piece of equipment for any adventurer is going to be their weapon, and for us that's the Rapier. This will be your primary weapon. It's 1d4 plus your strength in damage normally. Remember, we will be substituting out strength for our dexterity to get that higher damage score out. And this has a crit range of 19 to 20, doubling on a confirmed critical hit. Ideally, you want to eventually get this or make it adamantine to keep it safe from being sundered, overcome damage reductions, and to overcome other material-specific damage reductions. There are various oils that you can apply to make your weapon count as silver or cold iron or whatever you may need in the moment. Also, definitely consider getting the flamboyant enchantment put on your main weapon. This will grant you one extra panache that can be used for deeds or re-rolling a 1 on an attack roll. Absolutely incredibly handy. This refreshes at the start of each day as well, so you don't have to put any points into it. It just has an extra one handy that it will generate for you. So very useful to have, and it's only a +1 bonus, so compared to other enchantments, fairly cheap as well. But also consider getting the Swashbuckler's Rapier. It's a +1 rapier that lets you spend a panache point to grant it Bane against any type of humanoid that you select for 1 round. So this is still pretty handy. It's not as great as flamboyant, but still very handy, because a Bane effect will essentially make the weapon count as a +3 weapon and deal an extra 2d6 points of damage towards the selected humanoid type, so dwarves, elves, humans, whatever falls under that humanoid category, orcs. What limits its effectiveness is that you can't affect giants, undead, constructs, dragons, outsiders, which outsiders covers a huge variety of flavors of creature. So definitely limited in its effectiveness, but the fact that it only counts as a +1 weapon with all of that is still pretty handy and gives you room to enchant it with flamboyant, with other Bane effects or other enchantment effects like good or chaotic or whatever you need to generate extra damage and overcome damage reductions. And then after that, for our offhand pick, we're going to be grabbing a buckler, which, doesn't provide the same degree of defensive bonus as larger shields, but it doesn't interfere with your class abilities. You shouldn't be attacking, because that negates your ability to apply extra level-based precision damage to your attacks. And also, it's just thematically appropriate. There are so many historical treatises that cover fighting with a rapier paired with a buckler. So it's thematically appropriate, it's historically appropriate, and it's mechanically appropriate. Ticks all the boxes for me. But I'm peculiar like that. So this is your offhand pick. It gives you a +1 to your armor class and a -1 to your armor check penalty. Consider getting enchanted with something like arrow deflection, which counts as a +2 enchantment bonus. This lets you deflect a ranged weapon attack once per round at a DC 20 reflex save. If the weapon attacking you is enchanted at all, then you add in the enchantment bonus to the difficulty. So if it's a +5 bow you're being shot with, that's a DC 25 reflex save. But given our high reflex bonus and our high dexterity score, this should be a pretty reliable, fairly consistent save on our part, for at least once per round. The other enchantment I would consider putting on your buckler is Reflecting. Very, very useful. It counts as a +5 bonus, so fairly expensive, but it allows you to reflect a spell per the spell turning spell back at the enemy caster who sent it at you once per day. So this is really useful. I mean, this is probably about the best way you have of defending against spells directed at you. So a lot of those mind controlling or mind affecting spells that specifically target you, spells like Searing Light, definitely great for you to have and use this against enemy casters. And then for your other armor pick, we're going to be going with a chain shirt. This will be your main armor covering your body and all your fleshy bits. This gives you a +4 to your armor class, a max dexterity of +4, and a -2 armor check penalty. Eventually, you'll want to upgrade this to a mithril chain shirt. It will make it lighter, decrease the armor penalty to 0, and give you a max dexterity bonus for your defense of 6. So having all that together will just help to keep you alive overall. I mean, having a +4 armor class with your, you should be eventually getting a +6 bonus from your dexterity. That's 10 to your armor right there before we add in any enchantments or any other defensive sources, like say from the buckler. So definitely very useful to have. And enchantments that would definitely need to be put on this would be energy resistance, which costs 18,000 gold pieces, does not count against your maximum enchantment bonus for any specific item, which will help reduce damage from sources like fire or cold or acid, whatever you may get put on there. You can eventually, unless your DM says otherwise, get your energy resistances all up on there. And then also determination, which is definitely useful for you, costs a very pretty penny at 30,000 gold pieces, but it casts a Breath of Life spell on you when you need it. And that's 5d8 points of healing that your paladin, cleric, or druid, or whoever doesn't have to worry about putting on you. And then we come to our general equipment, and this first one I just love so much. It's the Blouse of the Boastful Bastard. When you are critically hit, you will regain panache from it. Now, you don't want to be critically hit, but it's gonna happen eventually, so you may as well maximize your benefit from it when it happens. Since all of your abilities run off of panache, generate your panache however you can. You're doing it from critical hits, you're doing it by killing opponents, now you regenerate panache by getting critically hit. So, absolutely very useful. And then we also have the Plume of Panache. Now this fine item has to be worn with a hat that's worth 10 gold pieces or more. Nothing less will do. But it will provide you with 1 panache per day for use with your various deeds. And with rules as written, there's nothing stopping you from having more than 1. Now you can't equip more than 1 on a hat, but you can have a few extra in your bag. So after you burn out 1, swap it out for another and just keep it going. The only thing limiting you on this would be your DM saying no, you are not carrying around 15 plumes. But I would think 3 is reasonable, and 3 extra panache is definitely worthwhile. The next item is one that's a classic. It's useful for any adventurer. It's the Cloak of Resistance. This will give you anywhere from a +1 to a +5 bonus on all of your saves. And given that our will saves are terrible, having any bonus to them will be great. And then another item, it's again another classic, one that will be useful for any class, but especially lower armored classes, is the Ring of Protection. Now this will boost your armor class by +1 or up to +5 and will cost anywhere between 2,000 to a whopping 50,000 gold pieces, and you'll need this to boost this lower AC that you're starting with. Now the next item here is one that I definitely recommend frequently, but it has been rightly pointed out that it is massively expensive. And that's the Belt of Physical Might. Dexterity and Constitution is what you want out of this, if you can afford it. It's anywhere from a +2 at 10,000 gold pieces to up to a +6 bonus to each stat for a terrible 90,000 gold pieces. But it's worth it. The only thing is you're more likely to encounter this as a piece of loot or a quest reward kind of a thing, so don't count on seeing this a whole lot unless you can afford to get it made. What you're most likely to be able to get, though, is the Belt of Incredible Dexterity. This will give you anywhere between a +2 to a mighty +6 to your dexterity score, costing you between 4,000 to 36,000 gold pieces. Again, this is more likely what you're able to get, and it is still very, very useful. It affects your attack, your damage, your initiative, your reflex, your defense, your skills. I may have said one of those twice, I'm not sure now, but we are gonna move on anyways. And we're moving on to the Headband of Alluring Charisma. It essentially does the same thing as the belt, only giving you a +2 to +6 bonus on your charisma stat, costing anywhere between 4,000 to 36,000 gold pieces, and you'll want this for your panache and for various class abilities and your skills that run off of your charisma score. And also, what swashbuckler isn't alluring, dazzling, handsome, and charming to all those he meets? But from there, the last item is another classic that is useful to any class, and that's Heward's Handy Haversack, or as it's legally known in Pathfinder, the Handy Haversack. I keep using the term now and then. It has expanded storage, similar to what the Bag of Holding can do, just on a smaller scale and on a per pocket basis. And whatever you want to draw out will automatically be on top. It still requires a move action, but this prevents attacks of opportunity from happening on you for drawing an item from the bag, and it will cost you a comparatively mere 2,000 gold pieces. Still fairly expensive, but definitely a worthwhile get, and as far as other magic items go, it should be comparatively common and easy to grab. But there are so many other magic items out there that are just so useful depending on the situation that they're in. It all kind of depends on what campaign you're in and what enemies you're fighting, but overall I think these will be useful to you regardless of setting for the most part. I mean, every swashbuckler will need to run on panache, so having panache boosting items will be useful. But what do you think? Did I miss the mark here today, or have I struck home and dealt a deadly blow? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. What items would you recommend? What items would you remove from this list? Or have I just completely lost the plot and completely went off the rails here? Hit the like button or dislike button as suits your fancy, and let me know your thoughts down below. And if you haven't done so already, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.